Each year, countless people around the world face their own personal disturbing mystery. Many of these are quickly answered as missing people are found and crimes are solved. But a fraction of those mysteries remain unsolved, and the family and friends of the people involved head into the new year with more questions than answers. Number 10. Nikki Chang Saley McCain was last seen in May after visiting her brother-in-law in the hospital. When she vanished without a trace, her sisters began a campaign to find out what happened to her. Nikki was 19 years old at the time of her disappearance. Her sisters described her as very outgoing and funny, and the person they would turn to if they were in need. She'd been married to her husband for 16 years, and they had 4 children together. But the relationship wasn't a good one, and there had allegedly been many fights, including one that left Nikki in the hospital in December of 2023. Nikki had allegedly told one of her sisters that she was planning on getting a divorce, but she'd always been worried about being the one to break up the family. Even with the problems in her relationship, Nikki apparently remained involved with her in-laws. In May of 2024, her brother-in-law found himself in the hospital after an emergency. Many family members had gone to visit, and there was what was described as a shuffling of vehicles. Different people were traveling in different cars, and some people became separated from their vehicles. On May 17th, Nikki sent a text message in the group chat that she shared with her sisters, letting them know that she was visiting her brother-in-law in the hospital. The last text they received from her was at 12:38 a.m. the following morning. She planned to drive her mother-in-law's truck back to her home on the Redding Ranch area. From there, one of her husband's friends was going to give her a lift back to her own home. One of Nikki's sisters sent another message to the chat a little while later, but Nikki didn't respond. According to the sisters, this wasn't too unusual. They would often go a few days without hearing from Nikki, and they didn't worry when she didn't respond. It was a few days later when Nikki's husband contacted them to tell them he thought she was missing. Nikki had left her husband for brief periods of time before, often going to stay with one of her sisters. But this time, nobody had seen or heard from her. The sisters immediately knew something was wrong and contacted the police to report her as missing. It's unclear where exactly Nikki was last seen. Nikki's own vehicle is a 2002 pewter-colored Chevy Avalanche. It was found on May 25th, abandoned in a remote location of Tehama County. It was about an hour's drive from Redding Rancheria. But what this means is unknown. According to her last text messages, Nikki wasn't with her car at the time of her disappearance. The fact that she was getting a ride back to her home from her mother-in-law's house suggests that her car wasn't at that location either. The police have revealed little information in this missing person case, as it's an active and ongoing investigation. Nikki is described as being 4'11" and 110 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. Redding Rancheria, Shasta County Secret Witness, and Kingsman Philanthropic Corps are each offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to Nikki's location. Anyone with information can contact the Shasta County Major Crimes Unit at 530-245-6135. Number 9. The strange disappearance of Jannah Bryan is a missing person case that took place this year and hasn't received much attention. Jannah's last known location was Los Angeles, but what she was doing in the city and even how long she'd been there is a mystery. In 2023, Jannah graduated from Cornell University. She was a bright young woman with her whole future ahead of her. Her sister described her as a natural leader and someone who people loved to be around. After graduating from university, she moved back to East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and lived in a house that she shared with her mother. Over the following months, Jannah fell out of contact with friends and even close family members like her sister. The change happened gradually, so there wasn't a moment when her loved ones were alerted to anything strange going on. By April of 2024, Jannah's sister hadn't heard from her in a while and was beginning to grow worried. She didn't live nearby and wasn't in contact with her mother, so they asked the police to conduct a wellness check. The police visited Jannah at her home and confirmed that both the young woman and her mother were still living there. Jannah remained quiet, but in August, she reached out to contact her ex-boyfriend via email. This was actually the method of communication that she had last used to talk to her sister. The email read, "Gone for a few months. Back, moving to a new city Monday. Bye." It was a strange message to receive, especially as it didn't seem to be prompted by anything from the ex-boyfriend. Why Jannah chose to inform him about the move over someone like her sister is a mystery. It's believed Jannah was still in East Stroudsburg when the email was sent, but it's not really possible to tell. The next email from Jannah came from October 16th, and again she contacted her ex-boyfriend. The messages didn't seem to make much sense to him. They read, "I think we should get married, and I think we should work in the industry," as well as, "I was just in contact with the commissioner of the Department of Water Management in a city, and it's a brilliant idea." These might be clues as to what was going on at the time, but they could also just mean nothing. One clue was that Jannah's email account was now set to Pacific time, indicating she was somewhere on the West Coast. In November, Jannah's sister tried to get a hold of her again, but received no response. It was on November 13th that she was reported as a missing person. Not long after her family started to post about her being missing, someone in Los Angeles reported seeing Jannah there. Friends visited West 8th Street, where she'd supposedly been seen. Many people there reported seeing someone that matched Jannah's description, but nobody could actually point them in her direction. On November 19th, the LAPD issued an Ebony alert. This is a specific missing person alert when an African American between the ages of 12 and 25 goes missing. In a press conference that came with the alert, the LAPD stated that Jannah had last been seen at around 9 a.m. on October 16th near the 2000 block of West 8th Street. Who saw Jannah at this point and how they knew her is a mystery. The date is significant though, as it's the same date as the last emails she sent to her ex-boyfriend. It's unlikely Jannah willingly disappeared. Before she went missing, she told a friend that one of her biggest fears was being kidnapped, and she asked them to look for her if she ever disappeared. Jannah is described as being 5'7" and 125 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information can contact the LAPD Missing Person Unit at 213-996-1800 or 1-877-527-3247 during non-business hours. Number 8. Roy Wied was not the kind of person to disappear without warning. So when he didn't show up to church on May 5th, the community of Sparta, Tennessee knew something was wrong. Roy was well known and well liked in the community. He was very outgoing and got on well with everybody. In the 90s, he'd coached the local school's basketball team, which ended with them winning the state championships. At the time of his disappearance, Roy was 64 years old, but he was still in good health and co-owned a real estate and auction company. His work meant he was rarely without his phone, and normally was easy to contact. Most people knew Roy from church, where he served as a pastor. It was here where people first realized Roy was missing. When he didn't show up on Sunday morning, the rest of the congregation was sure that something was wrong. A neighbor went to Roy's home to check on him and found the place empty. Roy's truck was still in his driveway with the keys on the console, and his phone was inside charging. Nothing was out of place, and it looked as if Roy had just left. After talking to locals and searching through CCTV footage, investigators determined that the last time anybody had seen or heard from Roy was on Friday afternoon. A neighbor's doorbell camera had captured Roy's truck being driven home at about 3:30 p.m., and in a recent news report, Roy's brother pointed out that they couldn't be certain that it was actually him driving the truck. It was only captured due to unrelated movement close to the camera, which means other activity near Roy's house might have been missed. Between 30 minutes and an hour after his truck passed, Roy was seen walking down Lovejoy Road where he lived. At the time, the person who spotted Roy didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and there was nothing to suggest Roy was in any trouble. Not long before Roy vanished, he had talked to his brother on the phone. Roy told him he was getting out of shape and that he was planning to start walking again. Roy's brother believes he was on one of these walks, having left his phone to charge after it ran out of battery. Roy likely didn't think he would be gone for very long. Teams started to search the local area as soon as people realized Roy was missing. The search effort included the use of drones, sniffer dogs, and helicopters, but no trace of Roy was found. The road where he was last seen is surrounded by fields, with some wooded areas nearby. It's possible that Roy ran into trouble in one of these areas, and the search teams somehow missed him. The extensive searches made it unlikely, but there's always a chance that searchers missed something. It's also possible Roy disappeared willingly, though there's no obvious reason why he would want to vanish. He had no known personal issues, and he also had no known connections to anything that may have resulted in foul play. Roy is described as being 5'11" and 175 pounds. He was last seen wearing a beige shirt and cowboy boots. Anybody with information can contact the White County Sheriff's Office at 931-836-2700. Number 7. Zelig Williams was last seen at his home in Columbia, South Carolina in October of 2024. 2 months on, no trace of the missing Broadway performer has been uncovered. Zelig had made big changes in his life roughly 9 months before he vanished. From a young age, he'd been interested in dancing and performing, and dreamed of making it to Broadway. In 2016, he achieved that dream when he became part of the cast of the musical Hamilton. For the next 7 years, he performed in various musicals, and in 2022, he won the role of Marlon Jackson in a musical about pop star Michael Jackson. But just before Christmas of 2023, Zelig quit the show and Broadway, moving back to his hometown of Columbia, South Carolina. Details of why Zelig left the show were never revealed, but he claimed God had told him it was time to move on. Back in Columbia, Zelig had started workshops to help teach others to perform. But he opened up on social media about not having a job for the first time since he'd become a professional performer. He talked about his mental health and traumatic experiences from his childhood, which made him who he is today. While all this was going on, Zelig's disappearance came without any warning to his family. He was last seen around 9:45 a.m. on October 3rd leaving his home. He didn't return that evening, and Zelig's family and friends couldn't get in touch with him. His mother reported him as a missing person the following morning. Just 15 minutes after Zelig left the house, his phone sent an automatic SOS message to family members. It seemed to indicate the phone had been involved in a crash. At the time, the recipients hadn't been worried, but now it seemed possible that something had happened shortly after Zelig left. But those fears seemed to be dispelled that evening. At about 11 p.m. on October 4th, Zelig's car was discovered near the trailhead of the Palmetto Trail. There were no signs the car had been involved in any crash, nor any indication as to what had happened to the missing driver. It's possible that the SOS messages were nothing more than a disturbing coincidence, but until this missing person case is solved, it'll be impossible to know. Zelig's disappearance was quickly publicized. Witnesses came forward to say that they'd seen both Zelig and his vehicle at the trailhead on the afternoon of October 3rd, confirming that the car hadn't just been driven there by another person. His family don't believe he knew the trail well, but did say that he had enjoyed going on walks as a family. And it's possible that was all Zelig had intended to do. Searches of the trail and the surrounding area commenced. There are many bodies of water nearby, and water levels had been high around the time of Zelig's disappearance. Off the trail, vegetation was dense, and the terrain changed dramatically. It would be easy for someone to get lost if they'd accidentally left the trail. Though no evidence has been found yet, the police haven't been able to rule out foul play in this case. It's also possible mental health played a role in the disappearance. Zelig is described as 6 foot and 150 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information on the case can contact the Richland County Sheriff's Department at 803-576-3000. Number 6. In mid-November of 2024, residents of quiet villages in Suffolk, England, noticed strange lights in the sky. Over several nights, the mysterious objects were seen hovering or circling overhead. This wasn't the beginning of an alien invasion, but may have been something even more sinister. The villages in question were located between 2 Air Force bases, RAF Lakenheath and RAF Mildenhall. Both are utilized by the United States Air Force and are home to fighter jets and a refueling wing. Residents in the villages would have been used to spotting military aircraft overhead on various exercises. It's also a popular location for plane spotters. So when they spotted something unfamiliar, it was immediately alarming. One resident described seeing a strange triangle-shaped aerial vehicle that was dark gray in color and looked official. Another spotted something that looked like an orange ball in the sky. Witnesses didn't jump to extraterrestrials to explain the mysterious phenomenon, but thought that they might be drones operating in restricted airspace. Lakenheath and Mildenhall weren't the only Air Force bases to receive visits from these strange drones. RAF Feltwell in nearby Norfolk was also targeted by the drones. Like the two Suffolk bases, RAF Feltwell is also used by the US Air Force Base. The strange sightings made local and national news. Both the US and UK military confirmed that the drones didn't belong to them. Who they actually belonged to remained a mystery. While the military tried to assure people that the drones hadn't actually posed a threat, some noticed activity around the bases had changed. Villagers commented on the increase in military and civilian police officers in the local area. Plane spotters reported that communications between planes and ground were now done over more secure methods, and some planes had been redirected away from the impacted bases. The British military was also announcing a new laser weapon that would be utilized against drones, which could stop them in their tracks. On their own, the drones wouldn't be too disturbing. Hundreds of thousands of people in the UK have drones for recreational or commercial purposes. It's possible this could be a group of individuals just messing around. The drones were reported as being very high-tech, but that still wouldn't rule out a more innocent explanation. But the British bases aren't the only ones to have noticed these drone incursions. The mysterious phenomenon actually started in the US, with Air Force bases in New Jersey reporting drone activity. More recently, bases in Germany have also spotted the strange drones. Drones were also seen near factories. It's possible the later sightings in the UK and Germany were simply copycat actors who saw news reports on the US drones. But a more disturbing explanation is that all the incursions were the work of the same group. Some commentators have suggested people working for the Russian secret agency GRU to be responsible. The activity began shortly after support of Ukraine increased. All the locations impacted by the drone attacks are ones that could play an important role in that support. One possibility is that the incursions were relatively harmless themselves, but were designed to simply test the response to airspace disruption. Another is that the drones were used for spying purposes and could have reported back valuable information. In each case, the operators of the drones have not been found, and residents who've spotted the mysterious aircraft are left with more questions than answers. Number 5. 19-year-old Ellis Cox was only 5 minutes away from his home in Aintree near Liverpool when he was struck by a bullet. Ellis passed away before he reached the hospital. Since then, his family and the police have been searching for the person responsible. It was the evening of June 23, 2024, when the crime took place. That afternoon, Ellis asked his aunt if he could borrow a bike to go on a trip to Southport with his friends. It was out of the ordinary for him. According to his family, he didn't often go out without a family member, with the exception of visiting his two best friends at their homes. Even then, a family member would usually drive him to and from his destination. He'd recently started hanging out with some new friends though, and they'd made plans for that Sunday afternoon. Ellis's aunt lent him the bike, although she was nervous about how late in the afternoon it was and told him to be careful. When he left, the family believed the main danger would come from traffic or being knocked off the bike. They never imagined what would happen to him. Ellis and his friends rode to the train station where they caught the train to Ormskirk. They hung out for a while, and police believed they were on or near the Edge Hill University campus. After a few hours, the group traveled back by train to a station called Maghull. The plan from there was to ride along the Liverpool Loop Line, a cycling route in the area. The group had made it to an industrial estate near Ellis's home, and he called his mother to let her know he was nearly home. That was around 11 p.m. Shortly afterwards, Ellis was found with a bullet wound on a road near an industrial estate. What exactly happened during the attack is a mystery, but the police don't believe he was the intended target. Ellis had no known links to anything criminal, but it's possible some of his new friends did. The police suspect the incident may have been related to a dispute between rival street gangs, which Ellis was caught in the middle of. Ellis was taken to the hospital, but he did not survive the attack. The police have made a number of arrests in the case, but so far no one has been charged. Both the police and Ellis's family believe someone in the community knows something. It's possible that they believe they might be in danger themselves if they come forward with information. But one of the biggest problems the family believes they're dealing with is the stigma around talking to the police about crimes that have been committed. The family have campaigned continuously since Ellis passed away, and that included a 10,000 leaflet door drop with the aim of contacting 10,000 different households to raise awareness about the case and ask for information. Anybody with information on this case can contact the Merseyside Police via 101 or through the website dedicated to the case. Alternatively, you could contact Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800-555-111 with reference number 24000-554-719. Number 4. On the morning of June 25th, 2024, Zyania Valore's parents realized she wasn't at home. A search of the local area turned up no clues, and they reported her as a missing person. 6 months on, there's still no sign of her. Zyania is considered an at-risk individual. She was 21 years old at the time of her disappearance, living with her parents in California. When she was a teenager, Zyania was diagnosed with autism, and she and her parents spent the next few years trying to figure out the best way for her to live with her condition. Unfortunately, Zyania had become more isolated, refusing to leave the house and not looking after herself. Her parents tried to encourage her to go out and join her father on walks with the dog. Zyania joined them a few times, but it wasn't something she enjoyed. She preferred to sleep in and stay up until the early hours of the morning. When her parents woke up on the day of her disappearance, they assumed she was still in bed and went about their day like normal. Around 11 a.m., they returned home from a shopping trip. Zyania's mother was looking for a place to put an air conditioner unit when she noticed Zyania's bedroom window was open and the window screen was missing. She went to check on her daughter, only to find there was nobody in the bedroom. She realized Zyania hadn't been there that morning and vanished in the night. A quick search of the area didn't reveal any clues, and by noon, Zyania was reported missing. As she has autism, the search for Zyania began immediately. This wasn't the first time she had gone missing. In 2020, Zyania left the house and was found a few hours later at a local church. This wasn't somewhere she had visited before, and why she chose to go here was a mystery. Zyania's family were hopeful that something similar had happened this time. Not only was Zyania not at the church, but nobody in the local community had spotted her this time. During her earlier disappearance, many neighbors had seen her walking out and helped her parents to bring her home, but this time there were no sightings. She hadn't even appeared on the doorbell or CCTV cameras. Zyania had her phone with her when she vanished without a trace. The phone didn't have a SIM card and only worked when connected to Wi-Fi. It was also connected to her laptop, which investigators could use to try to trace the phone. They found that it had connected to an open Wi-Fi network at a nearby Airbnb in the early hours of the morning. Sniffer dogs were brought in to try to trace Zyania and followed her scent along a path that passed near the same Airbnb, suggesting she had walked down this route when she disappeared, but the scent suddenly stopped along a cycle path. Her father noticed that the trail followed the same route he and Zyania had walked on one of a few occasions that he'd managed to get her out of the house. It's possible she chose that route due to its familiarity, but it may just be a coincidence. It's believed Zyania left her room via her bedroom window at around 2 a.m. It would have been difficult for her to do so alone due to her short height, but no unknown fingerprints were found in her bedroom. It seems that she left the house willingly. She was wearing just a tank top and shorts and wasn't wearing shoes. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Zyania has been found. She's described as being 5 foot tall, 90 pounds with black hair and brown eyes, and a mole under her nose. Anybody with information in this case can contact the Ventura County Sheriff's Office at 805-654-9511. Number 3. On the evening of July 2nd, 2024, the police in Atlanta, Georgia received reports of an unresponsive woman at the side of the road. At first, they believed she was the victim of a hit and run. It was only later that they discovered she'd actually been struck by a bullet. The person who took Shannon Boswell's life remains a mystery. The crime took place shortly before Shannon's 31st birthday. She was described as someone who lived life to the fullest and was well loved by those who knew her. She was someone who was there when her friends needed her. Unfortunately, a lot of circumstances surrounding what happened on the day Shannon lost her life remain a mystery. It's not known who she was with or what she was doing when the crime took place. At around 11 p.m., the police were called to Martin Luther King Jr. Drive Northwest, near Westlake Avenue Northwest. It was there that they found Shannon. It seemed like she'd been hit by a car, and initial reports described it as the scene of a car crash, with the driver missing. Meanwhile, Shannon's friends and boyfriend were calling her mother Tammy Boswell. They told her that Shannon had been struck by a bullet and was no longer alive. Tammy tried to contact the police to find out more information. She called at least 3 times, and each time was told there were no reports of anything like that happening. Shannon's friends continued to insist that was what happened. The next day, Shannon's body was examined by the coroner, who discovered the bullet wound. Neighbors close to the scene of the crime also reported hearing a weapon being fired, shortly before what sounded like a car crash or a car going over the median. It wasn't possible to say whether it was the bullet or the car crash that had claimed Shannon's life, but it was obvious someone had intentionally hurt her. The police believe Shannon was intentionally targeted, but the reason why couldn't be confirmed. Shannon was a black trans woman, a demographic that's more likely to be the target of violent attacks. It's not possible to say for certain if this was why Shannon was targeted in this case, but the police haven't been able to rule that out as being a hate crime. According to the National Black Justice Collective, Shannon's boyfriend advocated to the police on her behalf. The police have appealed to anyone with information on the case to come forward. DeKalb County Police Department can be contacted at 404-294-2911. Number 2. On the morning of September 4th, 31-year-old Tyler Weathersby went for a walk and never returned. More than 3 months on, he remains a missing person. Tyler lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, with his wife Mona Lisa and their 3 children. Mental health care was an important issue for Tyler, and he would often go on walks for his own mental and physical health. According to his wife, it wasn't unusual for him to be away for a few hours on one of these walks. He would go to a spot to meditate and come back refreshed. This was what she thought was happening when she last saw him. The day before he vanished without a trace, Tyler got into an argument with his mother, Janine. He was very close to Janine and his 3 siblings who lived in a different state. In late August, Janine came to Sioux Falls to visit and spend time with Tyler's new baby daughter. The plan was for her to head home on September 4th, but the day before, she and Tyler got into an argument. The argument ended with Tyler driving his mother to the airport a day early. When he returned, he was still upset. According to Mona Lisa, neither of them got much sleep that night. Tyler's mother saw the whole argument extremely out of character for him. She contacted Tyler's older brother, who called Tyler to speak to him himself. His brother said Tyler didn't sound like himself and was speaking in circles. When Mona Lisa woke up the next morning, Tyler had already left the house to go on a walk. She was getting the children ready to go to school when he returned. Tyler didn't stay long though, and as Mona Lisa and the children left the house in their car, Tyler started another walk. He wasn't home when Mona Lisa returned. At first, she wasn't worried, but as the hours passed and Tyler didn't return home, she knew something was wrong. Tyler was reported as a missing person that afternoon, and the search to find him began. He left behind his phone, wallet, and keys, and the police had no idea where he might have been heading. Some CCTV footage was recovered, which showed him walking in the direction of the interstate, but it's possible that he changed direction somewhere out of view of the cameras. Search teams checked his usual meditation spots but found no sign of him. Tyler is described as being about 6 foot tall, weighing 155 pounds with brown eyes and black hair. Anybody with information in this case can contact the Sioux Falls Police Department at 605-367-7212 or the Sioux Falls Crime Stoppers at 605-367-7007. Number 1. Having a family member go missing is always a terrifying experience, but missing person cases become even more challenging when a loved one goes missing abroad. And that's what the families of Frank Guzman and Carolyn Katba had been experiencing since September of this year. Frank and Carolyn are a married couple whose last known location was Mexico. The couple had been living in Austin, Texas. Frank was a PhD student at the University of Texas, working on his doctorate in anthropology. As part of his study, he and his wife were traveling to Chile. Frank and Carolyn planned to drive through Central America to Colombia, and then catch a flight from there to Chile. Frank's mother tried to warn him against the road trip, as she thought it was too dangerous, but Frank was optimistic and went ahead with the plan. They left Austin on July 15th, driving a gray 2016 Toyota Prius, and arrived in Monterey the following day. Over the next week, both Frank and Carolyn kept in contact with their families, keeping them up to date on where they were on their journey. On the 22nd, they arrived in the Mexican state of Veracruz. Since the couple went missing, the U.S. State Department has issued an alert about the state due to the high crime rate. Even though the alert hadn't been issued when Frank and Carolyn left Texas, the crime rate was likely something they were aware of, considering Frank's mother's warnings. The pair planned to cross over to Guatemala before going to Panama and Colombia. There's no record of either Frank or Carolyn leaving Mexico. The last messages from the couple were sent on July 22nd. According to Carolyn's family members, messages sent to her at about 11 p.m. were marked as seen, but there's been no activity since then. The families were expecting calls the following day, but they weren't too worried when those calls didn't come. They assumed that the phone reception had become a problem and thought Frank and Carolyn would get back in touch as soon as they could. It was only at the start of that school year that anybody realized something was wrong. Frank was supposed to have reached Chile by this point and connected to his university online. The university had received no communications from Frank and contacted his father to ask about the situation. Frank's family knew that he wouldn't have willingly ignored the university. He'd been working towards his doctorate for years and wouldn't give up without saying anything. The families tried to get in contact with the missing couple, but neither responded. Missing person reports were filed for Frank and Carolyn in Texas, and the families contacted the Mexican authorities. The University of Texas also started its own investigation. The university has an international critical incident response team, which is designed to help students who get into trouble while abroad. But the University of Texas closed its investigation in October without the couple being found. The family are appealing for information from anyone who saw either Frank or Carolyn or their vehicle. A GoFundMe has been set up to cover costs for the investigation. Frank is described as standing 1.75 meters tall and has brown eyes and short black hair. Carolyn is 1.6 meters tall and has brown eyes and red hair and tattoos on her left wrist and chest. Anyone with information in this case can contact authorities in Mexico on 228-319-3187. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.